Okay, I'm going to show you an example real quick of a contract that was written on a foreclosure REO property, and unfortunately this offer is never going to get accepted. It's guaranteed to be countered from the corporate seller. Even if the offer was full price or higher than full price, the way this is written, the seller is going to be forced to counter. And that's something you never want to do. You always want to present an offer that hopefully gives the seller the ability to hit the accept button, whether it's a corporate listing or a retail listing. You might not agree on, price or the main terms, but you don't want other things in your contract to be wrong to force a counter. I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm also going to point out a couple quick things with this offer to help better explain for you guys. First off, the offer is for $120,000 and it's a cash offer. Now, they're only asking or putting down $1,000. That's really, really, really weak on a cash offer. One of the biggest things I tell people to get your offers accepted, one of the best things you can do is increase your EMD. EMD shows these corporate sellers and these asset managers that do this all day long, EMD shows them you have a more serious buyer. That is a huge factor. So my advice is to always have the highest or stronger EMD. A lot of corporate listings like Fannie Mae, they require 10%. There's no questions asked. So this offer would have to have a $12,000 EMD. And maybe not go that high, but I mean, really 5% should be the minimum. And I can tell you from experience, sooner or later, putting $1,000 EMD on a $100,000 purchase price, when it's cash, will cost you a deal. Sooner or later, they're not even going to counter. They're going to take another offer that's stronger. So it's something to consider. Right here, the offer acceptance time frame. Let me go ahead and tell you, that figure really only matters to the buyers. It doesn't matter to a corporate seller. I've never had them look at that, worry about that. They can't. They get to the offer when they can, when they're allowed, when their procedures allow them, whatever it might be. Same day, the next day, 48 hours. But that figure does not matter to a corporate seller. You would believe the amount of phone calls I get saying, well, we had an acceptance date by tomorrow. I'm like, it's a bank. You're not going to get an answer that fast. It's not going to happen. I tell people it's good to utilize that for the buyer's sake, and you can explain to the buyer, we've given them 4 days. If they don't technically answer or counter us by then this offer is really null and void, and you've got no legal bounds to it. So it's just a peace of mind thing. But it's not something I would worry too much about. But here's the big kicker right here, the signability. This is a no-no, folks. Never, ever make that contract assignable. The only time that's going to work is sometimes if you're trying to wholesale a property or if it's retail. Don't ever do it on an REO. They're never going to accept it. That right there is grounds to counter the offer. Or it's going to be in their terms. It's going to be in their seller addendums that none of these contracts are assignable. They're never going to allow that. Right here you see the proof where this offer was. It's cash. So the buyer is paying cash. Everything else is okay. Nothing around here. No, that's a problem. Now, let me show you something else. So this contract has the buyer designating closing agent and paying for the owner's title policy. Here's what you got to remember on the bank property. If you choose and close with the seller's title company that they choose, they will pay the owner's title policy only. Okay? They're not going to pay all the fees incorporated. You're still going to have to pay some of those fees, but they will pay the actual owner's policy fee. They will pay that. If you choose your own closer, you're going to pay the owner's policy. You're going to pay all the closing fees when it comes to your owner's policy. Now, when you start getting over $100,000 purchase price, that's when it starts getting to be it starts to add up a little bit. And having the seller do it can save the buyer some money. There's a toss-up of what's better. I'd always prefer the buyer to try to control it. If possible, it'll be closed locally instead of down in South Florida. There's a bunch of issues with closing in South Florida. Number one, it takes them forever to get your deed recorded. And that can be huge to an investor. And nobody ever thinks about that or remembers that. But it's not like it's done locally for us where it's recorded fast. It takes a while. That's another hidden headache. But once you start getting a little bit more expensive, where the owner's policy is more expensive, and the $100,000 plus purchase, you start getting up there, that's when you really is a matter of, is it worth trying to save the buyer this amount of money? A lot of times it is. So that's another thing on this contract that I would just point out. The only other thing right here, this is where we put our inspection days in. I would never, ever, ever leave that blank or leave it 15. There's no reason to ask for 15 days in a foreclosure. It's just not going to happen, especially when you're in a hot property and you got multiple offers. That needs to be a 5 or a 7 tops. I try to generally go in at 7 and see what they say, unless the corporate seller has a procedure that's kind of set in stone. And a good example is Fannie Mae. They have a 10-day inspection period, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. 10 days. A lot of them do, a lot of them don't. But 15 is asking for a counter. There's no reason to go in at 15. You're killing your chances of your offer being accepted. Okay, so everything else in this contract is really basic, pretty good. No big issues whatsoever, anything else. But as I'm looking through this, I get to the very bottom because I've got to verify my proof of funds so we can submit this to the corporate seller. Lo and behold, I get this pre-approval letter. And this is why I want to bring this example up. Okay, well, if common sense didn't tell you right off the bat this is not cash, there's not a corporate seller in the world that's going to take this as a cash offer. I know what they're trying to say and do, this being basically a hard money lender, and it's not the same as getting a local bank financing, but it's still financing. Even this letter states that about the buyer's honest approval, and it's got to have underwriting and complete application, that kind of stuff. I mean, this is not a good letter. I can tell you right now that this offer would never ever be accepted like this. It's just not going to happen. And the only chance you possibly could have, it could be a little small bank that didn't put as much worry into this aspect of it, or it's a property that's just hard to sell and that doesn't have any activity. Anytime you have a hot property with multiple offers, this is a deal killer. I can guarantee you this buyer would never get this property with this letter and this offer written the way it is. So my point, this was really a poor job done by the agent, but the agents knew. The agent doesn't know any better. Who's going to teach an agent this kind of stuff? Well, no one. This is, this is school of the hard knocks, or you learn from somebody who's been through it like myself. And I can tell you, this is not the way to write a offer on, honestly, any house. And this is a good example of why hard money lending is not considered cash. Cash is something that you can go to your bank that day, get a cashier's check, pull it out, but that money is readily available. That's where it gets tricky, even doing 401k payouts or other investment payouts. People are going to cash out just because it's not liquid as of that day or the next day. And that's really the definition of cash for these corporate sellers. Anyway, if you have any questions, just let me know, but that's a good example of how not to write a corporate REO contract. This will get rejected or countered every single time.